I get you come around, yeah. You ease my mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those comments, I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time. I need the hind to throw that to the side, yo. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. When you're not around, when you throw that to the side, yo. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. 713 through the 281, yeah, I'm riding. Why they on me? Why they on me? I'm flying, sipping low key. I'm sipping low key and honest, find a rider. I get those goosebumps every time you come around, yeah. You ease my mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those comments, I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time. I need the hind.
Dad is already dancing.
Love it.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Loading Mag NUFC Away Days Champions League special. We are back for another Champions League preview, and look, it's bound to be a cracking one. I cannot wait to get this started. Dad, you're with us tonight. How are you? How's things? And how much are you looking forward to this Champions League game at St. James's Park?
Oh, I'm really looking forward to it, Pete. I'll be looking forward to it all the more if I was going. Like half the panel here that'll be on here tonight are going to it. And even with what they're doing with the drones and the next night, all the build up to it, it's absolutely amazing. So it's going to be some night. War flags will be out in spectacular fashion. Oh, it's going to be a tough one. I wouldn't like to be in Paris Saint-Germain shoes.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll get into that. And look, we won't beat around the bush, guys. We've got so many in the chat already. Welcome everyone in the chat. Get your questions in for Jonathan and Lee, and let's not wait any longer. As always on away days, it's all about the opposition view. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome back to the show Sky Sports only Davey.
Davey versus Davey. Here it is.
Hey. Oh, I'm here. Hi. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me back on. How you doing?
All good, Lee.
48 hours to go to the big one.
I know. And you've not come alone tonight because you've got our very own, a very, very special guest, Jonathan Johnson, coming and joining us as your partner in crime. So let's bring him
back up tonight. Come on in, JJ.
Welcome, Jonathan.
Hey guys, how's it going? Thanks a lot for having me on. Delighted to be tag teaming with Lee this evening.
Definitely.
We got this, Pete. We got this.
Yeah, we got it. We done it. We always have. But no, honestly, guys, it's a pleasure to have you on and to take the time to come and join us because it is, I think, for both clubs, a very, very busy time. Lots of fixtures, lots of things to discuss. And we'll get straight down to it, really, because really, really interesting. First and foremost, it's only really just been kind of announced. Obviously, Newcastle announced the big match, the next match for us at St. James's Park, the first in 20 years. An amazing feeling for us as Newcastle fans. But interestingly for PSG, you have already announced the squad from a French perspective just in the last few hours. And what was really interesting with that is that there's certain players that are not in the squad for that game. So just wanted to start and talk about that. I wanted to get your thoughts, both of you, on that. And the fact that Hugo Ekitike is not in there, Marco Asensio and Kimpembe. From your perspectives, is that a surprise? And what have you made of that squad that's been announced? Lee, we'll start with you.
I'm not really surprised from those perspectives. I think that they were all expected. We know that President Kimpembe's have been out since, I believe it was the Marseille game in February where he ruptured his Achilles. So he's due back November, December, I believe, around about that time. Hugo Ekitike, we know that there's been a few issues around him in the summer, and certainly it appears that he's surplus to requirements at the club. And Marco Asensio is nursing an injury that he picked up on international duty. and I believe he should be back after the international break. JJ might be able to update me a little bit better on that, but there's no surprises in terms of the omissions from the squad. So yeah, we PSG will go with what they've got.
Yeah, I mean, to that, I would add that Ekitike isn't even registered in the Champions League squad anyway. Basically, there was a bit of a falling out between him and the PSG hierarchy at the end of the transfer window. Like PSG were very close to missing out on Rando Colomwani. Basically, there'd been negotiations going on the side to potentially take Ekitike on loan to Crystal Palace, except PSG weren't aware that these negotiations were happening while PSG were trying to potentially sell him to Eintracht Frankfurt to replace Colomwani. So there was a massive mess there, and Colomwani and his agent's actions didn't go down particularly well with PSG, which is why he's been left out of the squad altogether. A couple of names to add in as well. Nuno Mendes, probably won't see him until next year now. He's just undergone surgery. And you've also got Lee Kang-in as well, another summer signing, who's currently on international duty with South Korea, trying to get himself out of military service, as most South Korean internationals playing in Europe do. So, yeah, a handful of players unavailable, but like Lee said, nobody that's sort of really, was unexpected for this one.
Interesting. I'll be honest, I've not kept an eye on PSG in terms of their squad, so it's interesting to get your opinions on Ekitike. But Marco Asensio was a bit of a surprise to me, but for me, I think you've kind of cleared it up there, which is interesting. But look, this is a big game for many reasons. Obviously, not just because me and Lee are either side of the coin in terms of teams that we support, but of course you've got the Saudi and you've got the Qatar situation with both clubs. And I think just not too long ago, Jonathan, you released a piece that you did for Sports Golazo around Newcastle United and PSG. I just wanted to get your thoughts, really, just and to touch on your article, because it's a fantastic article. I read it before we went live, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on both the situations with PSG and Newcastle, and just your opinion on where both clubs stand with regards to coming into this Champions League match, and what they've built sort of over the last year, 18 months.
Well, first of all, I'd say about Newcastle, I've been really impressed with the way that things have gone since the beginning of the Saudi project. I mean, there's a lot of parallels to PSG's own Qatari quest, which started over 10 years ago now. But the one thing that, has really struck me is sort of how sensible Newcastle have gone about their early business. Obviously we know that the financial means of the club now is much greater than it's ever been in the past. But there hasn't really been a temptation to sort of fritter that money and spend it just on, any sort of big name that might be available. It's been really, considered the transfer approach from the club. And you look at some of the pieces that have been put together, like the very early acquisition of Bruno Guimaraes, still to me strikes me as sort of the best deal so far of the Saudi era. Picking up Sven Botman as well, both Ligue 1 based talents, another very good acquisition. But also picking up Sandro Tonali this summer was sort of a bit of an understated statement, if I can really call it that, because obviously he's a player who is well known for what he's done with group opponents Milan. But also at the same time, I don't think many people would have seen him sort of swapping Milan for Newcastle. Yet to do that, was a really, a sign of the direction that Newcastle are heading in. And what's really interesting about it is, this game comes at a time when obviously there's massive pressure on PSG for this game because of sort of the geopolitical aspects of it. Losing, perhaps you could even argue drawing against a Saudi-owned club would probably not be welcomed by the Qatari owners, basically anything but victory. But equally at the same time, PSG are in this transitional phase now under Luis Enrique, where they've completely overhauled the squad. And although PSG generally tend to go quite heavy in terms of rebuilding the squad after disappointing seasons, they've gone all out this summer, moved on a lot of the big names, brought in a lot of new players. It's essentially an entirely new team, and they're still finding their feet, still getting used to playing under Luis Enrique, and Luis Enrique is still trying to build that team chemistry, and that doesn't come overnight. So to come into a real sort of high pressure game like this is going to be a real challenge for them. The one thing that I would say about PSG in this current form, they look like much more of a team than we've seen from them in the last couple of years. Sort of gone is the over reliance on individual ability, relying on someone like Messi or Neymar to dig them out with a bit of magic, which, to be fair, didn't really work during Messi's time at the club at all. Mbappe still, comes up big in important moments. How fit he is, will also be quite telling for this game, I think. But it's also really interesting, and I tried to put it into the piece earlier, that PSG have taken over 10 years to get to the point where they realize that individual brilliance and these big names aren't going to win them the Champions League. And if Newcastle have realize that before even spending a penny, then I think their chances of potentially building towards one day maybe being a competitive force in a competition like the Champions League, could be doable in a shorter time frame than PSG's quest, because it took them the best part of 10 years just to get to that final in 2020, which, with all due respect to sort of, I guess, what many people at PSG would consider to be the biggest match in the club's history, it also came in extenuating circumstances in a one-off, tournament format in Portugal. So a lot of interesting, subplots coming into this game. And yeah, I hope I've left Lee enough to sort of pick over after that.
All good, Jose, all good.
Brilliant stuff. But Leo, I want to get your opinions on that sort of Saudi Qatari link from your perspective. But equally, I just wanted to add in there, because Jonathan touched on it as well, but just the revamp of the squad in particular, because there has been a lot of major changes, and for everyone outside of sort of French football and PSG are kind of like honing in on that, and there's a lot of certainly comments from Premier League clubs, fans of Premier League clubs, saying PSG are finished, they're not the same anymore, they got rid of all their stars. But just give us a flavour of what PSG, in your opinion, are trying to do now, and how they're trying to shape up.
Yeah, obviously a lot of players shipped out in the summer. A lot of players that have been there for a long time. People like Marco Verratti, people like Julian Drexler. There's players that are obviously not featured around the first team as much of late, and I do believe that the changes were necessary. It became very toxic last season. John will tell you more than anyone, he's there week in, week out, and it became very, very toxic between the players, the fans, the board. There was so much kind of so many difficulties around the players. Even we had arguments between the sporting advisor Luis Campos and that back in Monaco, he fell out with Neymar at half time and other players. It was really kind of such a difficult place, and it just felt like change had to happen. It kind of felt it'd come to the end of its current cycle, and the club had to go in a different direction. What I wasn't expecting is that this kind of change to this extent would happen in one summer. So much has happened so quickly over the summer, and the business that's been done has been quite staggering, to be honest with you. As Jonathan said earlier, it's there's a team there now. It's gonna take time for this team to really kind of come to fruition. There's players that are there at the moment are still getting to learn to play with each other. They're still trying to build that chemistry, which isn't fully quite there yet, especially from an attacking standpoint. With the new defenders, we've got this Lucas Hernandez who's come in. There's Skriniar that's come in alongside Marquinhos at the back, and almost pretty much a completely new midfield. So, at the moment, I think PSG fans are patient. I think they're quite happy with how things are going. Yes, PSG are currently 5th in the table. Got that right. I'm going to JJ 5th after the weekend's fixtures.
And anything that's not top spot is normally territory.
but in any other time, it would be crisis. But it just kind of feels as though, okay, let's not panic. We're 2 points off the top of the league. Yes, we've dropped 9 points this season. I think it's 9 points. But there's an air of patience around the club, because we know that there's going to be some slip-ups along the way. There's going to be some poor performances. Things might not be perfect straight away. But I think PSG fans can see that something's happening, that the club is moving in the right direction. You know, the players there are all fighting. You can see on the pitch already that there's a real team feel to every game. I look at perfect example I can give is the recent 4-0 win over Marseille, and PSG were 3-0 up in the 90th minute, and Marseille had a free kick, and literally all 11 men were behind the ball, and it led to a counter attack from Colomwani, and Gonzalo Ramos scored and made it 4-0. But it just goes to show that PSG last season were defending with 8 men. And now this team is fighting. It's fighting on all fronts, and it might not be perfect. As those who watched Saturday's game in Clermont, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't a great game, and PSG were poor on the day. But I don't think there's any worry there. I think people are calm. It's like the Nice game again. PSG's only defeat in the league, which is against Nice, and there was some calm there, even though they were beaten at home. And I think 4 days later they came out and swept Dortmund away 2-0. So. There will be a few hiccups along the way, but I think PSG are moving in the right direction, but it's just going to take time.
I think something else that I'd add to what Lee was saying there as well is the fans sense that now. Like the fans that Newcastle supporters will see on Wednesday are a completely different bunch to the ones you would have seen last season or the season before, who really had just gotten fed up of the Qatari project. There's a lot of positivity around the stadium again. And one thing that, PSG can't ever really be criticised for, and I'm sure Lee has told you about this, Pete, many times, is the travelling fans, especially on European nights, are fantastic. And while there's no doubt that the atmosphere would be electric at St James's Park, regardless of the opponents, I think PSG's away fans will also contribute to a fantastic spectacle, because, when PSG get to go on the road, especially to some of these, big Premier League venues, seen it at Old Trafford in the past, Stamford Bridge as well, the Emirates, there's a real sense of occasion to that. And I certainly think that PSG will sense that, and they'll feel that this is a big game, because they have actually performed in sort of traditionally what you would call the big game so far this season. Beat Lens at home quite comfortably, blew Lyon away from home, although everyone's doing that at the moment in the league. Marseille as well, Dortmund as well. So you should expect a much different PSG side, I think, to the one that drew with Clermont at the weekend. In fact, the only thing I was surprised at in that game was that there wasn't more rotation. I was surprised to see Mbappe play as much as he did, and I thought that Enrique would have used it as an opportunity to perhaps try and build on those first couple of goals for Gonzalo Ramos against Marseille. But there's a lot more quality and a lot more strength in depth to this PSG than we've seen for many a year.
There's some great questions coming into the chat as well, guys, and I want to take one of them. It's from an old flame from both sides, really. Genie Wijnaldum is in the chat, and he asked the question: Ugarte is the player that I really wanted at NUFC. How well has he done since signing for PSG?
Good question,
JJ. I'm going to throw that to you. I've got too many superlatives for this guy. I'm going to, because I know you're not with him for long, I'm going to let you answer this one, mate.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it would be maybe a step too far to say that he's been transformative, but he has had a very big impact on this PSG side, despite, us only being a couple of games into the season. I guess the best way to sort of contextualize the impact that Ugarte has had is PSG have gone from a midfield that was over-reliant on Marco Verratti. They've swapped that style, which Verratti had in spades, for substance and greater reliability in Ugarte, and it's working so far. But part of that, and I think you guys will really enjoy watching him on Wednesday night, assuming that he starts, is the emergence of the teenage sensation Warren Zaire-Emery, because this kid is phenomenal. If Ugarte is a really top talent and is worth the price tag that PSG paid for him in the summer, which I believe was around 60 million euros, his release clause, Warren Zaire-Emery is potentially a generational talent. The kid is absolutely phenomenal. And the midfield combination, when you've got Ugarte in that holding role and you've got Warren Zaire-Emery in front of him with Vitinha, it's actually a very underrated midfield trio, and one that I think will continue to grow as the season goes on. But I'll send it back to Lee for the fans' view, because I think PSG fans have been crying out for somebody like Ugarte to really come in and be that midfield enforcer for a long time.
Absolutely, yeah. He's been huge for PSG, and it's no surprise that two of the recent games that he didn't start, PSG didn't win them. Nice and Clermont, and they missed him. and when he's not on the pitch, you can see the difference. And he allows Warren Zaire-Emery to play and do his thing and be comfortable and on the ball. But he's everywhere. He's literally everywhere. And Bruno plays on Wednesday. He's going to know he's in a battle. He really, really will, because this guy is literally everywhere. You know the old proverbial English saying of covering every blade of the pitch. Well, this guy certainly does that. He had an interview last week and kind of typifies who he is. He came out and said, when I have the ball, it's a game. And when I don't have the ball, it's a war. And that kind of, really typifies who he is and what type of player he is. And for anyone who's listening right now, if you haven't seen this guy, just, I'm sure you'll keep an eye. You'll be watching the Boys in Black and White, but just keep an eye on him, because he's, he's a young talent, and he's certainly going to get better. And, there's very few people speaking about Marco Verratti these days. And as much as he'll always be in the hearts of PSG fans, I think that, in terms of the midfield shuffle, as JJ said, with Vitinha and Warren Zaire-Emery, I think PSG fans are pretty okay with this season's transition, definitely. So we'll see how it goes.
I think we can delve into the footballing lexicon as well, because Ugarte is a master of the dark arts. He likes a bit of shithousery, which is something that was lacking for PSG for a long, long time, since the Thiago Motta days, really. And although he doesn't have the same technique as Motta, he certainly has the same kind of mentality. And Lee, with the quote that he just came out with, that it's absolutely perfect. It typifies who he is on the pitch, and I couldn't agree more that I think whoever can win the battle, assuming that both players start, between Ugarte and Bruno Guimaraes on Wednesday, will arguably give the control of the midfield to their team. And should that battle be won, I think that's going to be half the task for PSG.
Daz, I knew we should have got Ugarte this way. I knew it.
Yeah,
we talked about it.
Talk about him enough, and
we were linked with him as well, but no, he sounds like a proper talent. I'll tell you what, when you mentioned war, I think Bruno will be well up for that, alongside the likes of Longstaff and whoever plays alongside him, probably Sandro Tonali. I don't know how long have you got? Have you got to shoot now, Jonathan? Or have you got one more?
We've got a couple more minutes, enough time for another question or topic.
There was one more, Daz, and I think it was from Davey Cook around Kylian Mbappe. So David Cook's put in there a question: does Mbappe's special status cause divisions in the rest of the squad? I think it's been documented, certainly from the English press, about Mbappe's influence on the team. But I don't know which one of you, Jonathan, whether you want to start and Lee, whether you want to add to it, because I know Lee's got some opinions on this as well. How does Mbappe fit in this new resurgent PSG team?
Well, Lee offered the last one up to me first, so I'm going to offer this one up to Lee first.
I mean, obviously, without being as close to the squad, it's difficult to say. I would say that there appears to be some evidence that may have been the case in previous times, maybe last season, after he was handed his this incredible contract in May 2022 when he re-signed with the club. This season, potentially, it's a little bit more. The squad certainly feels a lot more harmonious. They're fighting together. It possibly doesn't feel so much of as an issue this time round. I don't know whether that's because certain players are maybe resigned to the fact that he is leaving after this season. As we know, his contract is up in the summer, and that link with Real Madrid still won't go away. There's no signs of him signing a new deal again. But you never know what happens with Mbappe. I've made decisions, my mind up that he's leaving, and accepted that he's leaving, and he's stayed, on numerous occasions. So I'll be honest with you, it feels a lot more harmonious place. It feels as though Mbappe is still number one in the team. He's still the man, the talisman of the side. I think he's obviously highly well respected. But last season was different because we had Messi, we had Neymar. There was other players around the club who potentially we're not happy with Mbappe, his contract, his influence. So we're led to believe, obviously, a lot of reporting in the French press in relation to that. But no, I think this season feels a little bit different. It feels as though, for me, that Mbappe is focused on PSG and the players are focused on kind of moving into this new era with Mbappe in the side and hopefully going deep into the Champions League. We'll see how that goes. And, you know, him being a huge part of that. But, yeah, it feels a better, more harmonious, less toxic place around Paris Saint-Germain at the moment. And maybe the ones that have left the club are the ones who really had, you know, the issues with Mbappe's contract, his influence at the club. Maybe that's what it was. Those people that have left are now they're the ones that were had most issues with it.
The ones who keep sniping at PSG since they've left to go to other clubs. That's what.
Are they? Oh, well, yeah. We know who they are, but the ones that are still talking, they still can't stop talking about PSG. Those same ones.
The one thing that I would add that I think creates a really interesting dynamic around Mbappe is that PSG, for the first time in a long time, actually have a really French core to this team now. You look at that attack, suddenly it's made up of guys that Mbappe is playing with at international level. Kolo Muani, Ousmane Dembele, very close friends with Mbappe, but Bradley Barcola, who's come in as well, Luca Hernandez in the defence, and Warren Zaïre-Emery emerging in the midfield. Suddenly you've got sort of half the team, that is either an up-and-coming, French talent or a fully established senior France international. And I think PSG have started to feel a bit more French because of that, which is nice because it's, been quite a rarity. And also I think it's kind of brought back this kind of respectability factor, not just sort of when people are looking at the team going, oh, this is supposed to be a French club, where are the French players? But also the fact that the players now seem to feel like it's more of a French club, and it's something that's certainly going to be interesting to see how it develops in the next couple of years. But because of that French core, I think it reinforces the idea that Mbappe is now the leader. He's not fighting with anyone else or trying to establish himself as the top dog. He's the undisputed top dog now. He's the talisman of the team, and I think he's just enjoying the fact that this all-star squad, that's not quite as all-star as he is, has been built around him. And, he's now the beneficiary of that, because if you look at his numbers from the games that he's played, or certainly going into the Clermont match at the weekend, the numbers he's put up so far this season have been really impressive.
I think JJ, and just to add to that, I think also, arguably, he's not in his best physical condition yet. He was in what we call the loft. Missed the preseason tour, so in terms of, I think he played one preseason friendly. I think it was the first one at the training centre. He scored in that, and then after that, I don't think he played any more preseason friendlies. So, like you say, the numbers that he's putting up, he's got 7 league goals. He got one in the Champions League, obviously, so he's on 8 goals for the season. Incredible. So when he does find his rhythm, it's going to be frightening, absolutely frightening.
That's got
JJ, I have a question for you. Yeah, I know. I'm looking at your Twitter.
If it's going to be to remind me about the score on the opening day of the season, I'm going to have to leave it.
No. I wouldn't be that cruel. No. Notice on your Twitter, you're obviously a Villa fan. Okay, apart from Mbappe, Unai Emery can bring in one player from League One. Who is it going to be for Villa?
Ooh, good question.
Yeah, it's a really good question.
That is a good question.
You know what? I do feel that Villa are either lacking a backup goalkeeper to Martinez, or sort of like a second striker to back up Watkins. So I don't think I'd be looking for either player to be like necessarily an automatic starter. Either that, or sort of a bit of natural width. It's caught me off guard, this one, a little bit. I'd probably have to go for somebody like a Kolo Muani, who works hard from the front, but also has the ability to score. I'm delighted with the pickup of Moussa Diaby. Like, if you'd asked me about a year ago, I thought Villa would be in a situation where they could sign Moussa Diaby from Bayern Leverkusen, I would have thought that you'd been drinking all day. But no, it's exciting times at Villa Park, and it does feel like we're just kind of like 1 or 2 players away from really having the quality and strength in depth to feel like we could really challenge to do what Newcastle did last season and reach the holy grail of the Champions League.
Definitely.
Obviously, as former winners of the Champions League as well, I should add.
I knew you dropped that in there, of course. And look, you're on to on. Although the start wasn't great to get yourselves into the last stage of the Conference League as well. So I'm sure you'll be definitely in with the chat with Emery's record in cup competitions to pull that in. But Jonathan, I know you've obviously stayed beyond allocated time, but an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you for tag teaming with Lee for this short period. We'd love to have you on again later on down the line when available. But look, just before you go, plug where we can find you on social media, and we want your prediction, obviously, for the game on Wednesday.
Well, thanks a lot for having me on, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure, and perhaps we could do a live one from outside Parc des Princes if you make it over.
Oh, what an idea!
Game with Lee as well.
Go on, JJ, with a beer in his hand as well.
It'll be fantastic. Best place to find all of my stuff, like the article I wrote earlier, is on Twitter, X, whatever it's called this week. So at @JON_Legosib. And yeah, in terms of a prediction, I mean, I'm going to make myself really unpopular if I go with the prediction I gave to CBS the other day. I reckon PSG will bring out one of their better performances. I'm going to say a PSG win, but wouldn't surprise me if it's a narrow one, maybe by a goal or so.
Okay. Well, look, it's been a pleasure. And yeah, we're going to hold you to that outside of the pot. With the beer in hand as well. With the beer in hand.
A beer in each hand in Lee's case.
Definitely. But look, we'll let you go. Thank you so much for taking the time. And look,
cheers, Jonathan.
Pleasure.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Cheers, JJ. Catch you soon, mate.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care.
Cheers.
Brilliant to have JJ on.
Top man.
Superb stuff, great opinions as well. Look, Lee, you know more than anybody. Like he is tops in terms of French football and his knowledge, particularly on PSG.
Yeah. JJ's just a bit of background in, there. He's lived in Paris most of his life, and his family lived there. He moved there as a young boy. Hope he doesn't mind me sharing it's a bit of information background about him. So, just he had a season ticket from a young age, way before the Qatari era, as a fan, before he became a journalist. And he's very much in the know. He's close to the club. He'll be at the press conferences. He's in the stadium, week in, week out with the club. He's been around Europe with the club for many, many years, and someone I've kept in touch with, certainly helped me in my journalism career, massively inspired me. So yeah, great guy. If you're not following him, definitely worth a follow, guys. He's very, very, very fantastic journalist and very much in the know.
Definitely.
We'll have to get him back as well, Pete, for the transfer window seasons again. Yeah, he'll get some great knowledge, as well as yourself, Pete.
Absolutely, get him on, sure.
I was about to say, the tag teaming won't stop here, guys. You know it.
I know you.
This is round one. You wait till there's another one in November. So have to do it again, definitely.
There you go. But look, it's great to have him on, and great opinions, of course. As well, and one or two weren't best pleased when he predicted a PSG win. We'll see how that kind of materializes as we go along. But look, over 120 plus in the chat. If you haven't already, housekeeping, of course, click that like, click the subscribe button to Loaded Mag NUFC. If you haven't already, great to have you in there. A few new people in the chat as well. Some fantastic questions that we'll come to in just a second. Lee, we're going to get to the game now. Rich, you're absolutely right, mate. In what he just put on the chat. Myself and Lee, we talked about this for years. In fact, Lee, you spoke about it more than I did when I was down in the dumps with Mike Ashley, thinking we would never be back in the Champions League. You were saying all it needs is a takeover. You'll be back there, against the elite.
Yeah. Things can change very quickly in football, very, very quickly. Fortunes can change very, very quickly. And nothing stays the same forever. It just doesn't. Football goes in cycles, investment now from all over the world, especially in Premier League clubs. And Newcastle was a really great, for any investor, really, what a great club to invest into. One club city, incredible fan base, already a huge stadium that you can build up on, and it's even you guys getting tickets for games already must be an absolute nightmare. I can only assume it's a bloody nightmare. So there is so much more to build on with Newcastle. There's so much scope for the club going forwards, and look, it's just the start. It's just the start of big things. And as long as the owners don't follow the PSG lead, and and what PSG have done and how they've kind of gone about their project at times, then as JJ said earlier, the sky's the limit for Newcastle. Absolutely is.
Definitely. Check out JJ's piece that he put out within the last hour and a half before we came on the show. Great piece about the Qatari Saudi kind of situation with Newcastle and PSG, and he actually talks about exactly what Lee said, is that from a Newcastle point of view, it's about watching other clubs and what they've done, and maybe learning from mistakes that have been made by other clubs, and actually making sure that Newcastle make the right steps along the way. And we've made a lot of really, really good steps, but the mighty win, I'm not happy with that. I have I'm the younger brother in this situation. And you're having me out like Lee's
this one.
In this.
I'm definitely the older one. Definitely the older one.
It's not the first time they've said it, so you've definitely done something with me, that's for sure. I'm portrayed as the older one in this situation. I don't know, but look, at this point now, I think we'll get into the match conversation, but of course, when we get into the match conversation, we need some stats.
Darkness falls across the land. The midnight hour is close at hand. Creatures crawl in search of blood to terrorize your neighborhood. And whosoever shall be found without the soul for getting down must stand and face the hounds of hell and rot inside a corpse's shell. The foulest stenches in the air, the funk of 40,000 years, and grisly ghouls from every tomb are closing in to seal your doom. And though you fight to stay alive, your body starts to shiver, for no mere mortal can resist the evil of the thriller.
Evening, lads.
Yay!
Magic, he appears. Champions League, 00 Stato, the main man, Keith Roll. How are you? How are you on this fantastic Monday evening after a 2-0 win against Burnley ahead of the massive Champions League game?
Yeah, I'd just like to say I got the match. I called the match absolutely spot on. 2-0, I said on Thursday night, and it was spot on again. So, it's always good when you get a match prediction right.
What were they calling you after that? It was Dr. something else. They called you, it wasn't Dr. Doom, it was Dr. something else.
You were calling us Mystic last month when I got 1 or 2 right. So
yeah. What have you got for us this week with regards to stats for PSG and Newcastle?
Got a load of stats here with a European theme for tonight. So I've got PSG, so their record in total in European competitions. A bit of the history of the club here, how Paris have done against English teams and how Newcastle have done against French teams. A little bit as well about the manager of PSG, and a bit about goalkeepers, players, and a little bit of general to round off. So Paris Saint-Germain record in the European competitions. They've played 264 games. They've won 139, drawn 60, and lost 65. Paris Saint-Germain, their European honours, 1 European Cup Winners' Cup and 1 Intertoto Cup. Once they've been a Champions League final, 1-time Super Cup finalist. They also were in 2 Cup Winners' Cup finals, winning one of those in the 90s. Paris Saint-Germain's record against English teams in European competitions, they played 27 games, won 8, drawn 8 and lost 11. With sort of famous wins against sort of Man United along the way. Newcastle's record against French teams in European competitions, they've played 13 games, won 3, drawn 4 and lost 6, with some memorable games against Bordeaux, Sochaux, Marseille, Troyes, Monaco, Metz and Bastia at the beginning. Moving on to the managers, Luis Enrique, he's managed 4 seasons in European competition, including 3 with Barcelona in the Champions League. His record as manager in European competitions, he's managed 80 games, won 50, drawn 13 and lost 17. And as manager at Barcelona, he won the Champions League, UEFA Super Cup and the FIFA Club World Cup. As a player as well, Luis Enrique, he also scored for Barcelona in Newcastle's 3-2 win in the Champions League in 1997. Moving on to the goalkeepers, Gianluigi Donnarumma, he has 13 clean sheets for Paris Saint-Germain in Ligue 1 last season. And both Donnarumma and Nick Pope have got a clean sheet each in the Champions League this season. So one of the O's has to go, as they say, possibly to on Wednesday night. And Nick Pope, when he made his Champions League debut, he recorded 8 saves, and that's the most for a goalkeeper while keeping a clean sheet in their first game in the Champions League since Alisson for Roma against Atletico Madrid back in September 2017, and he's also the first English goalkeeper to record a clean sheet in his first game since Fraser Forster for Celtic back in September 2012. Moving on to the players, Kylian Mbappe. We haven't really talked about a lot about him, have we? Kylian Mbappe. He's scored 41 goals in 62 games in the Champions League, including 6 goals for Monaco and 35 for Paris Saint-Germain. And he's scored 5 goals in 11 games against English teams in the Champions League, scoring in games against Liverpool, Man City and Man United. And he's scored 8 goals in 7 for Paris Saint-Germain this season. And he's scored 220 goals in 267 games in just over 5 seasons for Paris Saint-Germain. And I also wanted to speak a little bit about Moussa Dembele as well, who's previously been linked with a move to Newcastle in the media. He scored 10 goals in 47 games in European competitions, including 8 goals in the Champions League and 36 Champions League games for Barcelona. He hasn't yet scored for his new club, Paris Saint-Germain. No goals in 7 so far for Moussa Dembele, but there is more about his game than goals as well. And Goncalo Ramos, he's scored 2 goals as well in 7 games for Paris Saint-Germain this season. A few stats to round off. AC Milan versus Newcastle was the first game for Newcastle since the 2-0 home defeat in the Champions League way back in March 2020. And away from home, Newcastle are unbeaten in their previous 3 in the Champions League, 1 win and 2 draws. And Paris Saint-Germain's 0-0 draw against Clermont at the weekend meant they have had their worst start to a season under the owners of the Qatar Sports Investment. And the results at the weekend meant that Paris Saint-Germain, they've just had 12 points from after 7 games, which is their lowest points tally at this stage of the season since 2010-11 season. And just to round off with a general fact, I wanted to see if you could each get one of these questions. So there's 10 players who played for both Newcastle United and Paris Saint-Germain. Can you give me at least one player from that?
Alan Gomar.
Let go, Mark.
David Ginola.
Left field.
Lauren Robert.
Lauren
My favourite.
Robert, yes.
Johan Cabaye.
Yeah. Daz, you're very quiet there.
Oh,
Didier
sorry.
Domi.
Yeah, Domi.
Didier Domi.
Took all the easy ones.
Sorry,
Someone else.
mate.
Yeah, we did. Number 14 played left wing.
We said Ginola, did we not?
No, I don't think we did we?
Yeah, I said him.
Oh, did you? Oh, I was going to say. After that, I think, we said Domi as well.
Wijnaldum. Ha!
Oh,
Thanks, David.
Yeah, we go.
You've nearly named all of
Yeah,
them.
Wijnaldum. Good one, Wijnaldum. Yeah.
You've nearly named all of them. There's only just a few more. Habib Bey. Did somebody name Habib Bey? Sylvain Distin, Rodriguez Helder, and Fabrice Pancret.
Fabrice Pancret. Oh my
Yeah,
God, he's
nice, good. Yeah.
Puts him in.
That rounds off the stats.
Wow.
Did you look that up, Keith, or did you just have that at the top of your head?
Who's
That
that?
came off the top of the head.
Top of your head. I knew it.
No, only joking. There were a few, but while looking at the stats, I thought, there is a little bit of synergy there. Certainly during the certain time, the early 2000s, the Robson years, the back end of the sort of, in the Freddie Shepherd era, we were signing a few players that had played for Paris Saint-Germain, and a little bit there in the 2010s as well.
I didn't know Habib Beye played for both clubs. That was new to me. I didn't know Habib Beye played for PSG. That's interesting.
I love the way the chat is just mentioning anyone who's French.
Anyone French. Yeah, Tom Dixon, bless him. He's got Cabella. Cabella, did he come from Montpellier? Cabella. Did he come from Montpellier?
Yeah, he played Montpellier,
yeah.
And then Florian Thauvin
won the title there, yeah.
Came from Marseille. Florian Thauvin. Definitely wouldn't have come from there. Loic Remy, he came from Lyon. He didn't come from there. But yeah, brilliant stats as always. Give you a round of applause for that, Keith. Absolutely spot on. That is for sure. Now, what I want to get to is the match. And there's a reason why we've left this to the side for a little bit, because I want to get your opinions on this, Lee. And I want you to tell us what you think the team is going to be.
PSG team? Yeah, sure. Now, barring any last-minute injuries.
1 second. Hold on. Let me just load. Let me just load it up.
While you're loading that up, Pete, there was a good question here that we could put to Lee, and it was two similar questions, but I'll go for Stu Amos's question first. How is the PSG fans viewing the game against Newcastle? Interesting to know how we're viewed on the continent.
Yeah, really good question. I actually messaged Pete. I think I messaged him not long after the draw was made, and they were, prior to the draw, PSG fans were actually expecting a really tough group. So this group game is no surprise. And one of the feeling around it was typically we're going to get Newcastle from the top four. We're bound to get Newcastle. And it happened. And there was a little bit of unease to begin with initially amongst quite a few of the fans. And then it became, because PSG didn't start the season very well. And still haven't really, let's be honest. From a league perspective, they dropped 9 points. So there was a little bit of a feeling of, the uncomfortable feeling around this group. And one of those reasons were Newcastle, because Newcastle is still relatively unknown. This new Newcastle era is relatively unknown because it's kind of like it's been a huge springboard, and this trajectory has happened so quickly. So if PSG fans haven't been keeping an eye on them, just literally seeing the league table is enough to know that, especially in the Premier League with, ousting Liverpool from the top four just for one is quite a feat. So absolutely. In terms of this game, I think PSG fans have become a little more, let's just say, confident as the team have started to perform a lot better in recent weeks. I think PSG fans are really quietly confident that PSG will get the win. I think PSG fans would overly take a draw. I don't think there'll be too many issues around a draw at St. James's Park. I think there'll be a lot of emotion riding on this game because, again, like Pete said earlier, first game in 20 years, we see that they're doing like a light show. They're pulling out the stops. This is a really massive occasion. And, that crowd will really, I know it's a proverbial 12th man. It will be. It's going to be tough for PSG on Wednesday night. Really, really tough. But I think that PSG fans generally are confident that they can get the win, that they've got enough quality. And I've seen a few PSG accounts on social media today that are highlighting, in particular, the key players at Newcastle are likely to be missing this week. And that could be a factor, certainly, in terms of how this game goes.
Definitely. And look, let's have a look at it now. So first and foremost, I want you to have a look at the PSG team. How do you see PSG setting up both personnel and formation? Talk us through it.
Yeah, they'll go with the 4-3-3. Obviously, first and foremost, it'll be Donnarumma in goal. Just there, most definitely. They'll go left back will be Lucas Hernandez.
Let me have it. Let me change this appearance. Come on. Sorry, Lucas.
21. Yeah, number 21. So we'll have Luke at left back. Lucas Hernandez will take left back because Nuno Mendes is currently injured and out for a little while. So he'll continue at left back. It'll be a centre back pairing of Milan Skriniar.
Right-sided or left-sided?
Left, stick him on the left. There will be Marquinhos.
He's been getting a bit of stick this season, Marquinhos.
Marquinhos has been getting a bit of stick for 18 months. Not been his best period in the PSG shirt. All started really with that defeat in Madrid. Remember the Benzema hat-trick late on in Madrid back in 2022. And he went through a period of a good 12 months where he was really scarred by it, really, and completely lost his confidence, lost his form. And, if you're the captain of Paris Saint-Germain, there's kind of no place to hide. So he's took a lot of stick. But to be fair to him, he's shown signs of recapturing that form again this season. So hopefully, long may it continue for him because it's been a pretty tough period for him the last year or so. At right back, we're going to have, obviously, Achraf Hakimi, who is in absolutely incredible form this season. He's, I think, with Messi going and, being able to occupy that space down the flank, he's really kind of come into his own. I think, he said the other day that Luis Enrique is bringing the best out of him. He feels free. He's able to kind of really impose himself on games. PSG paid a lot of money from Inter Milan for him. And, I think it's really starting to show now. This is what he's all about, and it's nice to see him really flourishing now in that position. So that will be the back four. Holding, just a holding midfielder. Obviously, Manuel Ugarte will just sit there and sweep everything up, and then you can from there. On the left side, we'll have Vitinha. Just there, perfect. And then just over to the right, we've got Warren Zaire-Emery. Slick Warren, just being primed for the club captaincy one day. Again, if you've not seen him play, worth keeping an eye on, and also worth reminding yourself that he's 17.
Wow.
Incredible footballer. Okay, we'll have a front three. On the left, obviously, will be Kylian Mbappe. So the left of that three. We'll have him there. I'm going to go with the right. I'm not going to go with the central striker yet, but over on the right, I think we'll go with Ousmane Dembele. I think he will start. Now, this last position is a real toss-up for me, obviously, between Gonzalo Ramos and Randal Kolo Muani. I'd like to see Ramos start personally. I'd like to see him in there. PSG have not missed a box striker since Edinson Cavani left the club. They've not had one since then, and you could see what he did against Marseille. Scored twice. He was, just in incredible form. He looked dangerous, wonderful finisher. But I think for this away game, I think we'll see Enrique go with Kolo Muani. I think that's who will start this game. I think Gonzalo Ramos will potentially come into the game in the second half off the bench. I think Kolo Muani will start purely because I think he'll do the dirty work. He's willing to get back and defend, with the potential to leave Mbappe up on his own, for any potential counter-attacks. But, he's certainly a player who will chip in, on corners or, obviously set pieces. He'll get behind the ball. He'll chip in. He'll really kind of do that really dirty work for the team. And he's got an incredible burst of pace, as he's shown on multiple occasions this season. So, yes, Kolo Muani will kind of chip in and do the defensive side of the game. But I get, like you say, that leaves Mbappe to really, if he's left on the last man, then it's usually curtains. So any kind of lapses in defence, any opportunity for space or breakaway, that leaves Mbappe up top to do his thing. So I think that is very likely going to be the squad, barring any late injuries or niggles. I think PSG will go with that team.
Ooh, okay. Interesting team there. Dad, I'm going to come to you from a Newcastle perspective. What do you think the team is going to be Wednesday? Now, obviously, Lee's already alluded to the fact that there are a number of players that we're not expecting to be featuring against PSG. So, what are your thoughts? And then we'll get Keith to give his opinion on this as well.
Yeah, we go. My assistant manager, Keith's role there. Okay, Popey's in goal. Picks himself.
Yeah, definitely.
Then we've got Trips, and that would be the most interesting battle of the night for us. Maybe on the other side, on the left, Dan Byrne against Nabelli, and the chat is alluding to it as well. That's not going to be pretty. Then we've got it's such a pity that Botman is going to be missing for this, because I have a bit more confidence, if he was around. But we've got Schär and Lascelles.
Do you think Shaw's going to play on the left as he did against Burnley?
Exactly, because Lascelles can't play on the left yet. So then in midfield, now, Keith, you correct me in any of those. Are you happy with that defense?
Yeah, totally agree. I think it's such a shame about Botman. I think the confidence there when Botman plays, it makes the difference. But he's just not playing. He's not injured. So Lascelles has done well in the last two games. Go with Lascelles there. And that's probably the best, strongest back of the back four that we've got available at the minute.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, midfield is going to be Bruno, Tonali, and
where's Bruno? Bruno sitting?
Number 6, yeah. Tonali. Then we put him on the left. Tonali. Okay. And Longy, John Longstaff there as well. I don't think he'll play Anderson. I think he'll go for the experience Tonali, Champions League. Then up front, okay, on the left has to be Gordon, the man, our player of the season so far. Gordon, and with the on the right, I think he'll go again with Murphy. He play Murphy. Just have a feeling he'll play Murphy there, and have Miggy to come off the bench when we need him. And then up front with Wilson's potential slight injury, I think he's going to go with Isak. But it would be interesting to see if Wilson is fit enough to the bench and then to come off the bench at a later stage. But Keith, your thoughts on midfield and the attack?
Yeah, agree with your thoughts here, Daz. Certainly in the midfield. I think I've mentioned on previous shows recently as well about how well Longstaff and Guimaraes link up and complement each other. When Bruno goes forward, Longstaff goes in for the cover, and Tonali for the European nights and the European experience, really on the other side for sure. Maybe Anderson comes on late on in the game, but that's where I would start with in the midfield. Gordon, player of the season, yes, so far. You can definitely make cases for that. Yep, he has to start there. Isak as well on the other side. Certainly in attack, is your strongest forward at the minute. Unfortunately, with the Wilson injury, we haven't got the option of sort of rotating at the minute, the two, so it's got to be Isak. And then on the other side is an interesting one. I think we've mentioned it on previous shows, haven't we, Pete, about Jacob Murphy. And it's probably the area at the minute where we can rotate between game to game, between Champions League and the league. Jacob Murphy did really well over in Milan. Why not give him the nod as well here, and then bring, certainly if you need to change things up with the pace later on in the game, bring Almiron on in the second half.
A little bit like he did in the San Siro. That could well be the case. I know that Jano's just put in there, Miggy has to start. He didn't start in San Siro, which is, I think, probably part of the thinking, but potentially he could, and you bring Murphy on. But I'm inclined to think that Murphy could potentially start. But Lee, where do you think PSG could potentially win the game? Like, with their style of play, with what you've seen from them, what are they likely to do? Are they just likely to target our, in your opinion, our weak areas? And I'd love to know where you think they are. And what is their style? What do they normally do to kill games off?
Well, PSG are much changed tactically this season. They've gone from certainly under Pochettino and under Galtier, more so under Pochettino, a very counter-attacking team. They're now a possession-based team, so they'll literally pass you to death. So they're straight out of the school, that Barcelona school of managers, Pep Guardiola, who's obviously really kind of implemented this style of play incredibly well and been very successful with it. And then you've got, some of it, even his disciples, people like Mikel Arteta. You've got what Enzo Maresca's doing at Leicester, same kind of philosophy that's being implemented. Well, it's the same kind of thing again with Luis Enrique. It is taking time to change the philosophy completely because this team's not used to playing in this way. However, I would expect PSG to certainly have the lion's share possession, maybe 60% of possession, and Newcastle to definitely, try and cause some trouble on the break, which they've certainly got the players. Certainly looking at Gordon and Isak from that team, which can cause PSG problems. I will come on to where I see Newcastle causing PSG problems. But in terms of PSG, obviously, it goes without saying, Kylian Mbappe, the moment he's given any space, it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's Trippier, if he comes up against Lascelles, he's going to cause problems because he's one of those players that he's a match winner. He scores hat-tricks in World Cup finals. This is a guy who's, he's just one of the very best in the, top one or two players on the planet. PSG are very lucky to have him for as long as they've got him. And he's due a big performance, and this could be it. He loves his Champions League nights. You read out his record earlier in terms of his goal scoring record. It's up there with the very, very best when we're talking about goals to games. And this is a kind of occasion he'll be relishing, playing in England against a Premier League team, full house, big atmosphere. This is his stage. So certainly anything with Kylian Mbappe, he's going to be the danger man, of course. What will be interesting is Dembele and Dan Burn there as well, because, his pace, being able to get around him is very tricky. But he's also very frustrating, Ousmane Dembele. If he's bearing down on goal and he's got a one-on-one, then the likelihood is he will not score because, his finishing is very erratic. He can be a little frustrating, but he's also capable of the sublime as well. So that'd be a really interesting kind of pairing as well. Manuel Ugarte will play a huge role in terms of, turnovers and transitions, as you'd expect. And then just keep an eye on Achraf Hakimi, who's scoring for fun, attacking with pace, getting into dangerous areas as well.
We'll see more in this area.
Absolutely. But then you've got Mr. Gordon who's sitting there on his own when PSG lose the ball, and that's where there's problems. So I will, you might ask me that later, but certainly in relation to where the game can be won, it will be certainly number 7, number 10, those wide areas, getting in on goal in those wide areas. And obviously with the addition of Hakimi overlapping, I think they're the 3 key elements for PSG against this Newcastle side.
Just while you're there, and you've talked about it, where do you think Newcastle? You've already touched on it. Where do you think Newcastle could potentially hurt you? Should I stay in this area here?
The wide areas, the wide areas, absolutely, because you've got PSG. You've got 2 incredibly. PSG will press high, and they've got 2 incredibly attacking fullbacks. So Lucas Hernandez gets forward, got to get into those real deep forward areas, as does Ashraf Hakimi.
Positions here, Lee, would you say? Are they around here?
Maybe just a little bit further, maybe just a tad further back, really. But they will literally bomb forward at every potential opportunity they can. Very, very dangerous. Lots of pace. Really dangerous from attacking areas as well. So that's why Emmanuel Ugarte's role is very, very key. Now, where Newcastle can hurt PSG, so if the ball gets turned over, if Hakimi and Hernandez are high up the pitch, then PSG are potentially in trouble. Now, PSG will always give up opportunities. Unfortunately, they've conceded far too many goals this season, and a lot of that is because they've been caught out of possession, or the lapse in concentration. And unfortunately for PSG, Marquinhos and Skriniar are not exactly blessed with pace. So this is where Gordon, Isak, and Murphy. Personally, I'd go with Almiron, personally. But this is where these Gordon, in the form that he's in, certainly, and Isak's always a threat. This is where they can get some real joy. But they've got to make their chances count, because, if they get the opportunity to punish PSG, and able to attack with pace, Marquinhos and Skriniar probably won't stand a chance, because, like any defender will say, if you've got a striker who's or a winger who's got pace and they're bearing down and running at you, it's going to be difficult, to deal with that. That's what defenders hate the most. So that is, for me, is where where Newcastle have to take advantage of PSG. Those transitions, those turnovers, and with Hakimi and Hernandez potentially out of position. So they've got to make that count, because that's the way I don't know if you guys may have seen the PSG Nice game. Nice have got a striker called Terem Moffi, and he did exactly that. He absolutely ran PSG ragged that night. And that's the way in which Newcastle have to go about this PSG game. Because maybe quality for quality, PSG, on 11 versus 11, with that out there, PSG probably shade it in terms of quality, but that's not the be all and end all. It's about hard work, grit, determination, taking advantage, finishing your chances. So yeah, I think PSG will be looking certainly at Gordon and Isak as the biggest threats.
Yeah. I think I think you made some really good points, and I think the fullbacks could well be key in there. And there's a few in the chat that are saying, with Hakimi and Hernandez's starting positions, that Murphy and Gordon may well play in this position. Now, I would kind of agree that Murphy may play here, but I think Gordon will play here. And this is the conversation that we had last season. Daz, you'll know, Keith, you may well remember, about Alan Saint-Maximin, in that we allowed him to just stay here, and people saying, why wasn't he getting back and covering his ground, and why wasn't he getting back and covering the fullback? It's for games like this. And this is where I think Gordon may well play that same role, and he might not be seen here, covering here, that he may well be sitting in this position. And if Hakimi makes that run forward, that you'll probably see Tonali cover there.
And Tonali's going to have to get involved, because Big Dan Burn is in danger there. Because there's going to be too much coming at him down that side, that left-hand side. Is this your team as well, Pete? Because I know we said on the reaction show that you wouldn't name your team until this show. So any changes you'd make to it? And the reason why we Keith and I put Murphy in there is just that from an attacking sense, yes, it'd be Miggy all day, but it just Murphy might bring a bit more defensively as well. But yeah, what's your thought?
I think as well. I think just what I would say as well. I think as well, Almiron did almost the full 90, didn't he? And Murphy was only brought on for a minute or two on Saturday
2 minutes.
in extra time, 2 minutes in extra time, and that seems to be the pattern that House seems to be adopting with this rotation, and that is the only reason I'm thinking that Murphy could actually start is that coming into play again here, just like it did in Milan.
Yeah, lad, I agree with you. I actually think Murphy will start because I think it was a surprise that Murphy started it in the San Siro, but I don't think it would be a surprise if he started at St. James's Park in this game. So I would agree that this is probably very much likely to be the team. The only thing that makes me think that Almiron will start is because Almiron's fit enough to play 290 minutes back to back. And with the international break then kicking in, I think maybe Howe might think, right, we've got 2 big games here. We need to get points out of both of them. Let's play out Miguel Almiron, let him effectively run himself into the ground, and then he'll get a little bit of rest because he may not work as hard or may not need to work as hard in his games in the international break. He'll get rest in between and he'll come back fresh. That's my only real thinking with regards to that. But actually, like logically wise, I think Murphy will start, and I think you're absolutely right. Yano's mentioned about Wilson.
This is Yano that had Wilson in the championship last season. Remember, he was sent to the championship. Now he wants him in the Champions League squad.
You reminded him of that, not me. But the one thing I'll say is that nobody really knows about Callum Wilson, about what his injury is. There's lots of talk about his injury not even being logged. A lot of people saying he was being rested. Look, I still think Alexander Isak starts in the Champions League, but I would love to have Callum Wilson on the bench to bring on as an option late on in the game, because I think his ability to be kind of really just an absolute killer in front of goal, and he's already on 4 goals this season anyway. His ability to make that difference and potentially bring him on, maybe put Gordon on the right, Isak on the left, and Callum Wilson through the middle later on in the game could well be an option that PSG may not well have prepared for. However, I do think Murphy will be here, but I think Gordon will stay here on the chance that if the ball breaks for him, so if we bring the ball into the situation here, if the ball breaks here, if you got Dembele moving into here, Hakimi in there, Tonali winning the ball or Shaw winning the ball in this situation and playing him in, what you want here is Gordon one-on-one with Marquinhos, and that's exactly what you want in that situation. The pace, the directness, running in, bearing down on goal. We've already seen him win 2 penalties this season, but we've also seen him with the ability to cut in and whip the ball into that corner, but also go to the left here into this position and whip it back in for the striker. Longstaff scored on the back of it, but Wilson or Isak getting on the end of that. That is exactly what we want. And I think Newcastle may, at home, may well take the risk and ask the midfield boys to do a mammoth job in securing these 2 boys to allow Gordon to get on the end of things. And with what Lee was saying about the fullbacks, maybe what may well be being exploited in that situation actually can potentially, certainly on the left, fall into our favour. And Gordon's going to give everything. He's suspended for the West Ham game. He's going to leave everything on the line against PSG to ensure that he gets back and forth and commits as many players forward as possible. Murphy did a superb job, by the way. Let's not forget, against Rafa Leao at the San Siro, just doubling up here in this situation against Rafa Leao, and you had Longstaff in as a third. What you'll probably see is Longstaff playing more of a defensive role to try and stop Mbappe getting into this gap, because we know Trippier he's been outstanding for us, but getting into these gaps here and the pace that Mbappe has either side could well be a problem. But if you double, maybe even triple up into this area here to stop Mbappe getting any sort of joy, is going to be the difference between Newcastle getting anything and losing the game. So that's my thoughts on this. Ugarte is going to be key to mop things up for Isak, but Bruno Guimaraes has been on fine form at the moment, dictating the play. He'll be looking at whipping balls into these areas here for Isak. into these wide areas to pull him across. And it'll be interesting to see how Marquinhos and Skriniar deal with Isak not just being a full line striker, but pulling into the wide areas to receive the ball. But look, hey, this is going to be interesting. Tactically, it's going to be very, very interesting. We're going to need to be playing 110% for 90 plus minutes of this game in order to get anything. But Lee, anything to add on the back of that before we come to Daz and Keith?
No, not really. No, makes total sense in terms of what Newcastle's approach will probably be. Looks like that. I think that's a pretty clear and pretty fair reflection in terms of Newcastle's side who was likely to play. There might be one or two surprises in there. Don't know whether Wilson. Again, there's a bit of a unknown about Wilson, isn't there? So will he be fit? Will he be fit enough to start? Will he be on the bench? Who knows at the moment? But no, it'll be an interesting tactical battle. I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be a really good game. I know that Luis Enrique will he will know all about Newcastle. Remember that game in that 3-2 against Barcelona in '97? He was a part of that Barcelona side at Newcastle, and he even said after the disappointing draw at Clermont at the weekend, he said, Newcastle will be better. My players will be better. It'll be a different game. So, the players are already up for it. They know they've got a mammoth task that awaits. And obviously it goes without saying that Newcastle won't take much geeing up for the crowd, for the players. This is a huge, huge occasion. So those are people that are going to be there. Very, very lucky. I think it's going to be a really good game. I'm looking forward to seeing not just the atmosphere and everything around it, but also the tactical battle of Howe and Enrique. It would be really, really interesting.
Definitely. Daz, Keith, anything to add tactically before we move on?
No, I'm just really worried about those wing positions. Do Mbappe and Dembele ever swap over? I just don't want to see Mbappe run that burn.
They have, but it's not overly often that it happens. Dembele likes to stay over on the right. Ideally, I hear what you're saying. You probably want Mbappe on Dan Burn is probably what you're trying to say there.
Yeah. I don't want Dembele on them either, but
no, it might be a bit of a mismatch, of course, absolutely. But no, Mbappe, if anything, he'll go through the middle or he'll drift over to the left. Of course, he it's not as if he's not ever seen on the right hand side, but he usually takes up that position on the left. That's where he gets most of his joy.
Okay. Keith, anything to add?
Nothing that hasn't already been said. Yeah, obviously, be more concerns on the that side certainly. Rather than, I think it's going to be a massive challenge in attack. With Dembele and with Mbappe, there's no getting away from it. But that's what the Champions League is about, isn't it? Really, it's testing yourself on the biggest stage. And
yeah.
I suppose one thing is with Hakimi being pivotal to PSG's this season. I've seen a few of his goals today. I was just looking, but that might, if he pushes up, it's leaving Gordon there isolated. Then we know that he's our danger man, and everything's gone through him this season for us. So whereas they have two really strong attacking threats on either side. We've got Gordon, and we know we have Miggy as well, but. Yeah, I think it's. I don't see Miggy starting. Maybe later on, but
I'd be interested to see how Jacob Murphy exploits the pace of Hernandez moving forward, because a lot of people forget how fast Jacob Murphy is. He's rapid, and although I think he'll do more of a defensive role in this area here, I actually think that, like he did in San Siro, expose teams moving this way in this situation, moving forward and trying to get into the box. And creating opportunities moving into here. The key to it all is Alexander Isak. Alexander Isak was very much a striker at the San Siro that played in this area here. But Alexander Isak at his best comes into these areas here and he exposes these wide areas. And this is exactly what we need from him. So we will need him making runs into this spot, pulling out the centre-backs wide, but then we're going to need, I think, in my opinion, Tonali running into this area, because I think Guimaraes and Longstaff are going to be playing very much a defensive role. It's not really going to get too much past this area here. So Tonali's going to need to be running and almost, arriving late in the box to be an extra to Gordon, and then Murphy potentially making the runs into this area here if it lets me click onto it. So they'll probably be the four that will get forward, and Gomes and Longstaff will probably stay in this role here as two sitting in, just to counteract the counter attack. You may see Trippier here, but you'll probably see Longstaff here and just covering things over. But guys, we could talk about this all day. I think it's going to be really interesting, fascinating, in fact. I can't wait. It's gonna be great to see. Yannon says fast player on the pitch will be Gordon. Just needing to take advantage of that. I'll probably counteract that with Mbappe, because Mbappe is seriously rapid. I think we underappreciate him from that position. Maybe just one or two questions before we get to predictions for Lee.
Okay, let's go with this. Yeah, this one here from Rich Joblin was a good one. Are PSG used to teams that press them high up the pitch like Newcastle do? It's not necessarily anything new, but the way we do it, a number of top teams haven't coped.
No. Not really. Not in Ligue 1, as you'd expect. They're the big wigs. They're the reigning champions, especially with a lot of teams come certainly to the Parc des Princes, and they will set up their two banks of four and just whack a load of players behind the ball and basically scrap for their lives. And often PSG have come unstuck in that situation, even been hit on the counter attack, specifically last season, or they've been in a position whereby they've just not been able to find the winning formula to kind of break teams down. So in terms of the high press, not really often. I think the last time really is been in the Champions League, playing the likes of Bayern Munich, who play very pressed and high line, and were beaten quite convincingly last season. And obviously they faced Manchester City the season before in the group stage, and again struggled at times, specifically at the Etihad. But yeah, they don't often come up against those real kind of real high presses or a real high pressing team. So it'll be interesting, in terms of how Newcastle approach the game. If they do inflict that, then it certainly gives PSG something different to think about. But I'm sure, Luis Enrique's done his homework. He'll know what to expect, or hope to know what to expect from this Newcastle side, and have a plan in place certainly to combat that.
One from Ian here. He asked, Lee, do you know are there many PSG fans traveling over for the match?
Yeah, I don't. To be honest with you, I'm not sure how many tickets PSG were given. There are tickets still on sale in the away end, even now, 48 hours before the game. Partly what that is, can PSG do travel in really big numbers, what happens is a section of tickets will be given to the ultras, who are always given a quota of tickets from whatever's there, and then obviously the rest of the public will then scramble for the rest of the tickets. There are tickets available, and partly that is because there are some more logistical issues, I think, more than anything, in terms of getting to St. James's Park. What's happened is that the main direct flights out of Paris to Newcastle are operated by Air France, and as these airlines quite often, I'm sure Newcastle fans have found this with their planning for trips to Paris, Milan, and Dortmund, is that they've hiked the prices up. So you've got prices at around about £450 to fly from Paris to Newcastle, which is probably be around about an hour and a half, an hour and 45-minute flight, which is just insane, really, to think you could fly somewhere around the world for that. So it's very, very expensive. So what some fans have then gone and done is to fly to a different airport, like a Luton or a Heathrow, with the plan of getting a train. And as we all know, there is a train strike on Wednesday. So there are some logistical issues. There are some issues getting there. Getting to Newcastle is not easy for PSG fans. There's going to be a bit of a mammoth journey for those that are not willing to fork out £400 or £500 to get there on a direct flight. I know PSG have put a flight on, ticket plus flight, for €400 package to St. James's Park. I think they fly back directly after the game. Again, that's an option for some. But my good friend's coming over tomorrow. He's flying into Luton tomorrow night, and he'll stay near me. We'll drive up. We're going to drive up early on Wednesday morning. So he's lucky that, obviously, because I think there's one or two people that he knows that have not been quite as lucky in terms of getting to Newcastle, because it is, it's a hell of a way. If you're flying into Luton, it's a hell of a journey still on top of that. So, so there might be a few tickets left over, but there'll be plenty of noise. I can definitely assure you of that.
Good answer. Gini Wijnaldum's on fire tonight. He's another one. It's refreshing to see PSG sign some French players like Dembele, Koulibaly, etc. Have PSG finally learned from their mistakes with Madigan, Diaby, Nkunku, etc., and actually want homegrown players?
I believe so. Yeah, it's been something that's in the pipeline for a little while. It's been something that obviously players have called out for. Presnel Kimpembe, who's obviously a homegrown player, is gone on record, said many times that there needs to be a more of a French identity at PSG. So it certainly appears that is the route that the club's going down. Not entirely French, of course, because there's players from other countries that are doing some wonderful things at PSG at the moment. But it appears as though this club is going to have far more of a French identity through this next phase of the Qatari era. And certainly the fans are happy with that. And we'll see where it goes. I mean, obviously I wouldn't say they spent copious amounts of money, because they've brought a lot of money in, of course, this summer. So in terms of net spend, it's not been overly too high. But it's interesting, because I think PSG's business this summer has kind of set them up for the next 2 or 3 years. So because of all the outgoings and ingoings this year, I think it'd be a bit of a quieter summer next year, where they may just bring in an additional player here or there. There's Xavi Simons coming back next season as well, on loan from RB Leipzig, which is a star in the making. So that's going to be really, really exciting. And it's great to see. It's great to see a bit of French identity there. I think more than anything, there's been a real kind of a rift with the fans and the players. There's a real disconnect there over the last few seasons, and I do think that now it seems to be mending itself with this Parisian identity, especially some players born in the Parisian area. People like Koulibaly, people like Mbappe. Plus others. So onwards and upwards, and it's certainly more harmonious now with the inclusion of this French core.
Last question before we go to predictions. So it's from JC. Question for Lee before he leaves later. How is Will Still getting on this season?
Will Still's doing all right. Had a really good result yesterday against Lyon. Rams won 2-0 against Lyon, and Rams are up to third or fourth anyway. I know they're above PSG. So they're doing really well. Lost a couple of games, but pretty much won the rest. So they're doing really well this year. Look better than they did towards the end of last season, where they tailed off a little bit. Obviously, they lost following Balogun, who was on loan from Arsenal. Obviously, gone to Monaco now. But they've really kicked on this season, and it looks really good. They look good. They look strong. They're tough to break down, tough to beat. And he looks like Mr. Still's at it again. So we'll see where it ends up for him this season. I hope he does well, because it's good to see him kind of living the dream and doing a wonderful job. So see where they end up.
Shout out to Tom Dixon as well, who's on his holidays in Greece and tune into the show, or one of our mods, Tom Dixon. Cheers, Tom. And also, he reminds everyone to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. What are you waiting for? Do the right thing. Pete, back to predictions.
Prediction time. So, Daz, I'm going to come right back to you before I go to Lee, and then myself.
Go first.
What are we going for? The big game prediction. What are you predicting score-wise?
I think there's going to be goals. I saw someone put in the chat a 4-3 at one stage, but I am going to go 1-1 draw. I think that would be an absolutely brilliant result for Newcastle, especially with the injuries. If we had Botman, I would be thinking we could get something and it'll be to get that draw. It'll be the War Flags and everyone there getting us over the line. So I'm going to say a draw, 1-1.
I'm going to join you. I'm going to go Desmond Tutu. I think it's going to be a draw. I think it'll be a really tough game. I think there'll be a lot of emotion in there, but I think, as you said, Daz, I think there's going to be goals. So I'm going to go Desmond. For me, a double whammy, Lee. I'm going to ask you for your prediction, but Tom Dixon has also put in the chat as well. Do you think Newcastle will qualify from the group? So a little double whammy there, prediction, and then what you predict for Newcastle in this group phase.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards a 2-2 as well, Pete. That's what I had in my head. I'm leaning towards a 2-2. I think that I think it's going to be a really great night at St James's Park. I think it's going to be entertaining. There'll be goals, and I think Newcastle will give a good account of themselves. I really do. That crowd will really push Newcastle on, but also Newcastle will, I think PSG will obviously show their quality as well. PSG can see regularly, so I can see Newcastle scoring for sure, but I can't see Newcastle keeping PSG out either. So for me, 2-2 draw, probably a late equaliser from Newcastle, I would say. As for Newcastle qualifying from the group, I spoke to you last week, Pete, didn't we? When we got together last week, and I said to you that I thought Dortmund are the weakest team in this group. I think the next two games, regardless of tomorrow Wednesday's result, are absolutely pivotal for Newcastle. These two, that double header with Dortmund. I'm not sure. Is it the home game first or the away game first?
Oh, I think it might be. I don't know.
It's the home game first.
It's the home game first. I mean, that's an opportunity. If Newcastle were to get a point tomorrow, and let's say, Milan Dortmund was a draw, that'd be absolutely perfect for Newcastle to then, get Dortmund to St James's and blow them away. So
no, it's
it's
away first.
It's away first. Again,
No.
Again,
home. Sorry.
25th of October, Wednesday the 25th, we play them at home.
Yes. So, right, so it's away first. It's home first.
Yeah.
It's home first. Right, brilliant. So great opportunity. But the key for Newcastle to go through is, even if they don't win against Paris Saint-Germain, they must beat Dortmund at home. I think if whatever the result tomorrow, if PSG, sorry, if Newcastle don't beat PSG, they must beat Dortmund at home. I think a failure to win those any of the first three games might be difficult. Might be difficult to get that second place or first place. So for me at the moment, I think it'll be a shootout. I do think Paris Saint-Germain will qualify. I think they'll be one of the teams in the top two. And then I think it'll be also a battle between Newcastle and AC Milan. I think Dortmund will be the ones to crash out of the Champions League out of this group entirely. So, yeah, it's going to be a real battle. And that last game, is the last game against Milan at home? That's going to be massive for Newcastle. Yeah. That is going to be absolutely massive. I've just got a feeling that it's going to be winner takes all in that. I see PSG going through, and I think that'll be winner takes all.
What makes it worse is that I think either side of that game 6, I think we've got Chelsea and Man United either side of that.
Yes.
Of that picture. So it don't come any easier for us, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But, of course, we come to 00 Stato, the old Dr. Doom. What have you got for us this week? You got the right prediction for Burnley, so you've got money in the bank there, an old WWE phrase. But
who's going to cash it in? Who's going to cash it in on the night? I'm a bit worried, I've got to say. I wasn't as worried until the injuries started coming in last week or so, and I think it could be telling, certainly in defence and at the back, certainly with as well with. On the other side as well, I think Dembele, even though he hasn't got the goals, he does offer something else, and I think he will trouble Bern as well and Newcastle. As well as that, Real Madrid apparently are sending one of their chief scouts out to Newcastle to keep an eye on Mbappe, and it could be one of those classic European nights for Mbappe on Wednesday. And I think Newcastle could score. And they could score early or at some part of the game, and I can just see the roof lifting at St James's Park. But I think PSG could shade it with Mbappe. I think there's just a bit too much quality. Had Botman been at the back, then you never know. But it could just be a narrow win, be a narrow 2-1 to PSG. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Newcastle continue the undefeated run and get a point as well. 2 games unbeaten. But I just think the combination of the back four, the European experience of Paris, and Mbappe might just shade it.
Yeah, sorry to jump in there. Just I think that's a really good point. That Lascelles coming in is, he's not had a lot of football in the last 18 months or so. I think that's gonna, this is the top table of European football here that we're talking about. So it's going to be interesting. Look, you might pull out an absolute worldie of a performance, of course you can, but I think that's going to be a very, very interesting one, and certainly something that PSG will look to exploit. That they'll know his lack of game time, so they'll look to exploit that, I'm sure.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Did we get an official score up on the screen?
Keith?
Oh, right. Yes, the European nights as well. That sort of threw us off a little bit with the. It threw us off a little bit there.
For time here.
It certainly did throw us off there. But you never know. I mean, it could be. Let's just imagine that that's just on the other side. It could be the old 2-1. It could be the 2-1. Certainly, either way, but it could be the away 2-1, which I'm worrying about really. But let's just wait and see. It's going to be exciting all the same. Let's just enjoy it. These are the occasions. Can you imagine a year, 2 years ago, thinking we'd be playing Paris Saint-Germain and in the Champions League, and Mbappe, arguably the world's best player at the moment, or one of the world's best players at St. James's, had we have qualified 2 years ago, would also have Neymar and Messi at St. James's. Can you imagine that?
Well, Newcastle definitely would have won.
We've
defending with 8 men. Newcastle definitely would have won that.
The other thing is, we've 5 clean sheets now in a row here, and the last 2 games that Lascelles has played, we haven't conceded far that. So you never know.
Including Man City as well. Including Man City. Sorry, League One.
No, just saying anything can happen. Early sending off or an injury to a key player. Anything can happen on the night. So hard to predict, especially Champions League nights. Just they're special. They're different. And I think that even if PSG may have that little bit more quality on paper, I think just this game being at St. James's Park will almost be, a little bit of a leveler, because I just think it's going to be so hyped up there. I'm looking forward to getting up there. If anyone sees me, I'll be in the Greggs somewhere. I'll be somewhere doing something. I'll be just roaming around, and I'll be, what is it, the gate? I'll be around there somewhere. Yeah. I'll be right there.
You've got Greggs just over the road, I believe, haven't you?
Get him. Yeah. Come on. My mate's coming from Paris now. He loves his croissants. He loves all these pastries. So I'm going to take him for his first Greggs. So that'll be interesting. Very, very interesting.
Convert him to a Newcastle fan. He won't go home.
He said to me, actually, he come to me, I told Pete this today, he said to me, he goes, Lee, what's it like? I've heard Newcastle's crazy. I said, it is. You're going to love it. You're going to love it, I promise. And he said, can I wear my PSG shirt when I get attacked? I was like, mate, no, this is not like, you're not in Marseille, you're not in Saint-Etienne, you're not, this is Newcastle. I said, I'll probably buy you a beer. If anything, it's all good. It's all good. Nice, friendly crowd up there. Always a fantastic city, and always a pleasure to go there. I'm looking forward just as much as the games to be in Newcastle. I've not been for so long, so it's going to be great to be up there and just kind of feel the atmosphere. So it'd be nice to. I don't know if I'll see you there, Pete. By the way, I know you'll be getting up there a bit late. I'll be up there in the middle of the day, so I think I might miss you. I'll probably be in the stadium by then. So
I wish I was, but work's got in the way. So I'm literally scrambling. As soon as I finish work, I'm out. No chance to get change or anything. Out onto the motorway, up to St. James's Park. I'll be cutting it pretty fine to get there on time. But look, I'm sure I'll be okay, and I'll be in there for the game.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Possibly catch you afterwards. But look, guys, It's been a fantastic preview. Absolutely amazing. Thank you for 170 plus that have been in there all throughout the show, putting your questions in and getting your comments in. We've already got 80 likes. Let's get us up to 170 plus, because we've got 170 plus in the chat right now. Make it happen. Get it in there. First of all, Daz, absolutely spot on. Questions spot on. Comments spot on. As always, 00 Stato, amazing. Those stats just keep getting better and better. Champions League edition, and of course, Jonathan Johnson, brilliant stuff. Make sure you give him a subscribe and keep hold of his content. And last but not least, Lee, absolute pleasure to have you on. Great.
Thanks for having me on.
French football and PSG.
Cheers, Lee. As always.
Cheers,
best
guys.
PSG after Wednesday, of course.
Oh yeah. Rennes on Sunday, tough game. Always lose there. So, but all eyes on St. James's first and foremost, of course.
Definitely. I'm sure we'll catch up probably after the game, and we'll maybe get a little bit of content in to put on to loaded.
Absolutely.
But boys, the Champions League's back. Newcastle are back. Champions League, St. James's Park. The drones, as I put on here very, very quickly, are up in lights. As we've seen. Fantastic stuff. We are back, that's for sure. And just a couple of quality players. That's
amazing.
It's just amazing, and there's been more tonight, and there'll be adverts and stuff on the back of that. But it's just where Newcastle's going now, which is just amazing to see. Everyone in the chat, amazing questions. Thank you for all your support. Absolute pleasure as always. And of course, we will be back for more content after the PSG game. But we're back, guys. We're back in the Champions League. And of course, we do love playing away. Dad, say those famous words.
Yes, and it's not how do you like that. It's shout out to our sponsors. You know who you are. We'll just finish it. How'd you like that? Good night, everyone.
How you like